Welcome to Business Line's State of the Economy podcast, where you'll find insight, analysis, and the story behind the numbers.
Hello and welcome to State of the Economy podcast by Business Line. The SOE podcast deals with real estate, and today we have with us Mr. Niranjan Hiranandani. Dr. Hiranandani is a doyen of the real estate world, and he needs very little introduction, but still, Dr. Hiranandani, who's with us today, is basically the chairman of Naredco, apart from his regular ventures. Hello, Dr. Hiranandani, and welcome to State of the Economy podcast by Business Line. Sir, you need no introduction. You are a doyen of Indian real estate. So
it's a pleasure to be online with you. Abhishek, it's a pleasure.
Sir, I'll just quickly start with the elephant in the room, which is the budget and affordable housing, the two elephants in the room practically right now. I remember this being a bad year for affordable housing. And you met the FM. So how exactly has this affordable housing segment played out like so far in the last 1 year, and what transpired in your meeting with the FM?
Abhishek, let me share with you that in my 40 plus years of being in the real estate, this is the first time in my entire career that I have seen more than 25% drop in the numbers of affordable housing sales. It's never happened. So I've always seen it move up, and it's never been a downward turn. So it's a pretty big shock for me also, though I could see some trends in the marketplace. But actually, when the numbers have come out, I was quite surprised that this is not only in the metropolitan or major cities, but it's across the board through the country. So I think that's quite a shocker for everybody. I'm sure if it's a shocker for me, it's a shocker for the government, for the RBI, for the housing ministry, and I'm sure for everybody in the government and the private sector. So really, it has been quite a shocker. So that's one. Number two, that I think the reverse has happened in the mid segment and the luxury segment. People, of course, hear more about the luxury segment alone. But let me tell you that the volumes in terms of the two-bedroom segment has also grown, almost by 20 to 25%. While the luxury segment, which was actually a very small segment, has grown by 30%. But I don't think that is representative, because you have to understand that the numbers in the luxury segment are small relative to the 1 and 2 bedroom. But still, the growth has been larger. And in the super luxury, also the growth has been high. So we are seeing that growth in the last 1 year much higher. So if you look at the overall numbers in terms of sales, we find that the number has grown by 12 to 15% in terms of overall sales. So overall collections of stamp duty and overall collections of revenue have gone up, but affordable housing has suffered.
So when you met the FM, I think earlier this month, did this come up for discussion, sir?
Yeah, certainly. We have mentioned about it, and there were two aspects of it which we kind of suggested in terms of correction. One is the expedition of the PMAY scheme. As you are aware that the PMAY scheme, which is the interest subsidy for affordable housing, got exhausted last August, September. And after that, no money has been there. The new policy of affordable housing interest subsidy was announced in the first cabinet meeting of the Honorable Prime Minister in 3.0. And that talked about 1 crore affordable housing in the urban areas and 2 crores in the rural areas. But the policy framework has only recently come out. So there's been a much gap between August means 12 plus 4, 16 months between the exhaustion in the earlier scheme and the launch and operation of the new scheme. So during this period, we found that the sales has dropped. The second reason why the drop has taken place is the fact that the interest in terms of RBI rates is still too high is still too high. And we were expecting that interest rates would come down, especially in view of the fact that otherwise inflation is under control in the country. And there's no good reason why we should continue to have high interest rates. And those who are buying affordable housing certainly get affected with the higher interest rate. As you must be aware, in about 2.5 years ago, 3 years ago, interest rates for home loans was 6.5%, and the interest subsidy was 1.5%. So in reality, people were paying net 5% interest rate for affordable housing borrowings, and that was equivalent to the inflation rate, almost, say, for 1% less. So in reality, they were paying much lower EMI than it is there. But now the higher EMI has definitely hurt them. So both interest rates and not being available for PMAY scheme. And of course, there are other things which I pointed out to Honorable FM, which was the fact that the interest deduction for home loans has been 2 lakhs of rupees for the last 10, 12 years. And that needed to be increased to at least 5 lakhs of rupees. So these are 3 points in terms of affordable housing, which we suggested. There are suggestions at the state level in terms of stamp duty, etc., etc. But this was the points which I raised with the Honorable FF.
So one question which I can't help but ask you, and this is from a developer point of view, not from a buyer point of view. I can understand the concerns that buyers have, but why have developers not gone into affordable housing? Over the last 1 year, some of these bigger players and names, let's say, I'm just naming some for the sake of podcast and examples, like Prestige, which set up a JV, or even Tata's, or even for that matter, Signature in the Delhi NCR region. They haven't announced any such affordable projects. In fact, Signature has gone premium, if I may take it at that point of view. They're looking at 1 crore as a starting point for their projects, 1 crore rupees, which definitely is not affordable, right? I mean, is there some mismatch?
So the reality is true, and we'd like to dig deeper into that. A part of it is the ready reckoner rate or the Jantri rate, which is there in the states. What has happened is, over a period of years, the governments have been increasing the ready reckoner rate, the Jantri rates and others, in order to collect more stamp duty and other revenues which are collected to the ready reckoner rate or the circle rate or the Jantri rate. Now, because of that reason, they have pushed land prices beyond marginal limits. Number two, the states also, let's take the Bombay Municipal Corporation. They've pegged all the FSI, which has now been increased, to be paid on based on the ready reckoner rate. Now, which means that you are making all the housing, which is even affordable, unaffordable. So if you take a house in Mumbai, 50% of the cost of the house is actually goes away in taxes, in terms of stamp duty, GST, the development charges, the additional charges which have to be paid to the corporation, the state government, etc., and which makes the house unaffordable. So these are the two segments which causes unaffordability for housing, both the cause being done by the state as well as the central government. So both these people are at fault for the purposes of preventing larger companies and corporates from creating affordable housing, because that is something which they are not able to do in the segments that they are operating. So I think that's an issue. And of course, the demand has now increased in the mid segment and the luxury segment, while the demand has come down because the buying power has been compromised because of the other reasons which I mentioned earlier.
Do you feel, as the NAREDCO chairman, obviously, that there is some revision of affordable housing definition that requires to be made? And if so, what are you pushing for?
Well, I think that affordable housing segment will have to be increased to 75 lakhs, if not 1 crore, especially for cities like Mumbai, because you have increased the prices of land, etc. So that's the problem from the government side. So then you have to change the definition of affordable housing if you want to do it. The second method to get into intervention in this segment is to focus on rental housing. See, in the good old days, we used to have a large number of people and apartments where even charitable trusts used to create buildings for the purposes of rental housing. Even Chawls in Mumbai used to be on rental. But the Rent Act and other things have prevented all these things from happening. And we really need to incentivize it. So over a period of time, while the government, both at the center, the finance ministry, as well as the state governments have encouraged sale of housing to collect more taxes, they have not been able to incentivize rental housing. So that was another suggestion made by me as chairman NAREDCO to give a focus on rental housing in this budget. In the last budget, they have given emphasis on rental housing for industrial workers, analogous to what happens in China, where the workers live right next to the factories. And a similar suggestion, which was made earlier by us when I was President ASSOCHAM, that has been brought into implementation. But now what has happened is we need a policy on rental housing in order to actually cater for this segment of society, which is not being able to afford a house.
So if you could just quickly explain for a listener this concept of rental housing. I can understand Chawls being Mumbai as an example, but I don't see it as a very widespread common Indian phenomenon. Is it so, or am I misreading the situation? If you could quickly run through what is this rental housing thing and what the government can do to push this.
Let me explain. Number one, that even the richest country in the world, the United States, 50% of the population lives in rental housing from birth to death. So rental housing is a norm which is available all over the world and doing. Over a period of last 75 years, the government has not incentivized rental housing. So a developer is not incentivized to create rental housing, but he is incentivized to create rental commercial buildings. And that is why you have investments coming from Brookfield, from Blackstone, FDI, and others to create commercial buildings. Now, if you did a similar, and you also have REITs where all the benefits are given to the foreigners who invest into these REITs. Now, if you could do a similar thing for the purposes of residential housing and incentivize that for the next 5 to 10 years, you would create as much rental housing as housing for sales. And because we have not seen any of that happen, we are not able to visualize it. But it's there all over the world, and there's no reason why it can't happen in India. So you can't expect everyone to live in an owner house. So let's say, for example, I have a job in Mumbai, and tomorrow I'm transferred to Delhi or Bangalore or Hyderabad or Calcutta. Do I buy another house when I go there? And the answer is no. So you will stay in a rental house. So that part of the thing should also be expanded, and we should be able to do it. And you need to create a policy paper, both for the state government to incentivize it and the central government under the finance ministry.
Right, sir. And my absolute last question is once again from the consumer side of things. As the budget approaches and there is a lot of discussion every year on income tax, any push that you are looking at that would benefit both the consumer as well as the home buyer, affordable or otherwise?
I think they need to incentivize townships and call them infrastructure. See, today, for example, huge amount of investments are coming into roads, highways, ports, airports. But the similar thing is not coming into townships and other big investments, because housing townships is not infrastructure status. If you gave it infrastructure status, you would get long-term funding into townships like we do in Powai, in Thane, in Panvel. If that incentive was given to us, we do it without the incentives of infrastructure status, then many more people would do townships with long-term funding into doing townships, which would create quality infrastructure, both for the rich, for the middle class, and for the poor. You could have a kind of gamut of housing that can take place. And especially you would have the walk-to-work relationship that we have created in our township. So you need to create infrastructure structures for housing. as differentiated from what has been done, and on the same basis as you have done for data centers, for ports, airports, highways, etc.
Right, sir. So that was my last question. And once again, it's a pleasure talking to you and learning so many things as usual. I'm sure the listeners must have enjoyed listening to this and your candid discussions on affordable housing, something we are all discussing, but we're afraid to say.
Thank you. My pleasure to talk to you.
Same here, sir. Pleasure talking to you, sir. Thank you so much for your time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.